bergamot, echinacea, elderberry, balsam fir,
all
wing of
plants
bat.
are, the bat wings and all those little things are wonderful healing things that can be had as teas or soaked in oils or alcohol for various effects, for topical or internal use. And I can make things and teach people how to make things, not just to help heal people, but to add value to things and make money. So it's very easy to take $50 to $100 worth of material and $50 to $100 worth of some kind of a solvent. You put a little time and you strain it off and probably sell it for the neighborhood of $400 to $500. So more or less, with a relatively small startup, you can have side income and help to heal people. Although it's a slow process, you can gradually build equity in your own business through effort. So I started doing that with a couple women already because there was just a need for materials. Women wanted to be taught how to do this, and people were even gifting materials to work with on the basis that they'd be taught how to use it. So a lot of times it's just a matter of putting a network together of people who want to do it. It's not that hard. And I'd love to teach anybody you've got how to do herbal preparations. Because in the same way that Zora is growing the herbs, there's no reason that we couldn't literally grow the things that we then turn into other medicines and ointments. We make sure that everybody knows how to make medicines and that the knowledge is shared and passed on, rather than kept like some sort of an exclusive thing.
So Roger, what have you heard and what do you think of the rooftop garden with the carrot?
I've heard that it's fantastic, and I've seen pictures, and I've been up on the rooftop to see it in its new incarnation. It's basically a community effort connected with the business of the carrot to make the community and the environment better, but to create businesses like the Zora's Living Green Boxes, Food for the Poor, and it's very innovative to the extent that the city's been getting into green roofs. I'm pretty sure the carrot was one of the first ones, the kind of thing that would have promoted the whole concept of the green roofs. And I practically work next door, so it's pretty hard to not hear about the carrot green roof. And everybody's so excited about it. Haven't heard a bad thing about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what have you heard about social enterprise?
I've heard that it should be called wellness enterprise to avoid socialist implications. But social enterprise, I had to do a little research for some group that asked me to research social enterprise. And it's basically kind of like charity but different. It's kind of like business but different. It allows an organization to run somewhat like a business and a charity at the same time, where it's not driven for profit so much, but it takes that profit and puts it back into the business. But it's more of a model of economic sustainability, so that you're not just living off of the government and charitable donations, where the money's all going to administration. You've actually got an economic business model that generates money, in effect profit, but the profit goes back into the enterprise itself. And that's the nature of social enterprise. And as such, a lot of charitable type organizations are shifting into the social enterprise model because it allows them a greater flexibility and a better funding model. You don't have to worry about the government cutting you off. And to the extent that you fund yourself, you're able to come up with your own dreams. You don't have to worry about approval from some agency. If you can do it, you can do it. Wellness enterprise, I think, is a really good next step in letting the community know exactly what we mean by this social enterprise. Because I think they've grown so big and so fast, people are a little confused by what they are, and they've started to become nebulous and somewhat institutional. Whereas if we associate them more with wellness, as opposed to just society at large, then people will clue into the benefits.
And so a social enterprise funding model that goes back into the social enterprise, what does it go back into do when you say social enterprise that makes it different than a for-profit model?
Well, one example might be, for example, if you look at children's services. Right now, children's services are being funded by the government, according to the government model. You apply to the government and say, this is what we're going to do for the kids. The government approves it and gives you the money. You tell the government how you spent your money. And then you wait for your grant for next year on the basis of the approvals. And you more or less get into the same thing over and over again. And as most people have seen, the level and degree of child care has been relatively dismal. If anything, it seems to get worse and worse. It's like caught in this bureaucratic spiral. All the money and time is spent organizing and administrating the grants and filling out the reports and doing the bureaucracy. And it's not really about what's best for the children and how do we raise a bunch of money and do some great things for the kids. Whereas a business would be much more like that. Like if you said, my business is delivering service to children. And some people would say, well, there's no money in that. Who cares about poor children? Well, in fact, a tremendous amount of people care about poor children. Depending on how you market what it is that you do and explain to people the benefits that you give, you might find that that children's service agency might get double the money of the official children's service agency and could run itself at half the administrative cost and give itself permission to do things that might not be right in a political scenario, but are certainly legal and sensible. So that's where the communities are starting to look at it, and the children's service agencies are one of the originals. Like, there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not they want to turn, I think it was the native children's services into a social enterprise. More specifically, they had a branch within the children's services devoted to delivering art to the children. Now the government, every time they look at the funding proposal, they want to cut money. Well, they want to cut money from the art. But the people who work in the service delivery, they know that the art is where their greatest benefits and gains are for the children. That's where they can make the biggest leaps and bounds and give them the kids' identity and bring them into the community. So in order to save the actual program, they literally have to come up with a way to raise money. So to some extent they were forced into this position. And they're like, well, what if we get the kids to make moccasins and dream catchers and we sell them? And we sell them online. Well, the government's going to have problems with that because that sort of cost revenue acquisition type program could be seen as exploiting the children and it could come into labor laws and blah, 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 blah. But if it was a social enterprise or a wellness enterprise or it was a separate corporation, you don't have to worry about the government. In fact, pretty soon you could find that all those little moccasins and dream catchers, if they're marketed properly, will actually bring money into the social services. So that instead of the art program costing money, it actually makes money, does a better job, and gives money back to the other children.
Oh, I see. So the new children can be exposed to learning and do the same thing.
But the biggest problem, like in that particular instance, is something like that could only be approved to some extent with cooperation of the existing agencies. And there's incredible resistance within those agencies to understand anything. And everything moves at a snail's pace. And this is the thing that attracts some of the newer agencies starting up now. It's like, why set up a charity and be bogged down with all the rules of charities, when really all you have to do is set up a business. And instead of having to worry about seeing as a profiteering business on charity, you let it be known to people your interests are charitable. And the way that that's being expressed is your profit is being put back into your charitable activities. You're making a profit in the name of sustaining your charitable activities.
I see.
And that's my understanding of the social enterprise. And they're growing like mad. They're more or less a newer model for charities. And they allow the charities a level of protection that they didn't formerly have.